We're looking at a pretty strange figure today. Somebody who wrote what I consider to be kind of poetic, philosophical essays, who unfortunately did not have a very long life, but someone who had a certain kind of revelatory perspective, perhaps, on the human condition, on our experience of reality. Today we're talking about the French philosopher, mystic, and political activist, Simone Weil. She only lived from 1909 to 1943. She did not live a very long time. But it's obvious when you read her essays that there's something kind of strange and perhaps unhinged going on here. She has a manner of describing what our lives are like, the kind of condition we're in, that is very spiritual, it's mystical, it seems like the language and concepts that we have fail her. In some sense, they fail us all. But what she writes primarily on is the kind of suffering that we experience as human beings who live in this created realm that is separate from God. She was a Christian mystic. What our experience of that is like. And so what I asked you all to read for today was just a very short essay. It was like what? Maybe 1.5 pages in a novel called Metaxu. But before we get into that, let me provide you with just kind of a brief overview of her perspective, of her philosophy. So hopefully we can kind of make sense of what she's trying to say here, right? Simone Weil believes and espouses what we might call a mystical Christian worldview. Okay? But this isn't your traditional or fundamentalist version of Christianity. It's something that's a little more out there than that. Okay? She has a lot of the same beliefs that traditional Christians do. For example, she thinks that there is some transcendent creator God who's all good, all wise, all of that stuff. That we exist kind of in this realm that is, in some sense, separate from God, what she calls the world. So we're separated from this divine creator, this all-powerful being that our language and concepts cannot quite capture and grasp. But there still remains the possibility for a kind of communion with God, being one with God, something like this, okay? But she has kind of a very different view of creation and the world than a lot of traditional Christians. She was from a Jewish family, and so her kind of Christian mysticism kind of takes on this Jewish flavor, this kind of Kabbalistic, mystical flavor. She thinks that when God created the world and everything, and us, it required him to withdraw himself, leaving something like a void. So everything that exists in this created realm is separated from God. It's distanced from God. God doesn't show up here like the way tables and chairs do. Okay? God, who is complete fullness, had to withdraw himself in order to create everything. As a consequence of this, we kind of live separated from God. We live in a kind of void, a kind of emptiness. During our lives, we try to fill this emptiness up with a lot of different things. And those kinds of activities that are not understanding the nature of our condition properly, that is what ends up producing a lot of suffering, a lot of misery, a lot of oppression and exploitation. She was very concerned, not just with, describing her own mystical beliefs, but also with social and political structures and conditions. One of the concepts that comes up in her philosophy a lot is that of evil. I'm sure you all kind of have a fuzzy conception of what evil is. Her way of looking at it is pretty different. She thinks there's all kinds of evil in the world. Okay, now what is evil? Well, it's something like both a moral failure, not doing what's right, not doing what's good, but it's also a kind of psychological force. And this psychological force drives us to fill the void within us with power. That is how she describes what we're doing oftentimes on this earth. It would be a mistake, however, to think that within her philosophy, evil is all bad. This is kind of a strange thing to say, right? But evil actually serves a function in her worldview. What does evil do? Well, it drives us toward God. Evil is associated with what she calls affliction, suffering, and incompleteness. Part of this view, she thinks, is that as a result of how God created the world and what was required for him to do this, he had to withdraw himself so that he did not make up everything. As a result of that, human beings are inherently lacking and incomplete. As a result of being inherently lacking and incomplete, well, as I said earlier, we try to fill that void within ourselves by doing various things. For example, like cultivating power. Because what does power do? Well, it allows us to actually do stuff in the world, right? Obtaining things like power and money, you might think, provides us with a means for dealing with our situation. This is how we view these things, right? But we're kind of stuck in a trap until we realize what our existential condition is like, until we recognize the situation that we are in, being apart from God. What is that trap? Well, we're possessed. Not by demons exactly, but we're possessed by ego and desire. How do we live our lives? Well, we chase our desires. We look out for ourselves. We're constantly preoccupied with ourselves, getting stuff for ourselves, making ourselves happy. This does not lead us any closer to a fulfilling life, though. This doesn't lead us any closer to communion with God. And so she considers creation, in some sense, to be inherently evil. Evil in the sense that it's incomplete, it's self-centered, and it's power-hungry. Is that not how things in our world think and behave? Thinkers like Nietzsche and Foucault certainly thought so. They thought that what lie at the bottom of everything ultimately was just conflicts of things trying to cultivate and assert their own power. In fact, this is how Nietzsche describes all of life. He says life is inherently driven by this fundamental principle called the will to power. This is how organisms behave. This is how we behave. A great example of this is a plant. What does a plant do in its life? It grows. It extends its roots out into the soil. And does the plant give anything to the other organisms around it, or does it take minerals, nutrients, water, sunlight for itself? Does it take energy for itself to make itself stronger? Thus, Nietzsche says life is inherently assimilation. It's inherently domination. It's inherently something like a thing imposing its own will on others and its environment. It's appropriation. So, we have this void within us. We are incomplete. We try to fill that void by satisfying our desires, by obtaining material things, by being famous, whatever it is. But that's not how we should live our lives. On the contrary, life is, or should be, a process of us as individuals cultivating a relationship with the divine, moving towards the divine, so that we can have communion with the divine source of all that is. How do we do this? Well, we do it through self-effacement. By dissolving the ego within us. By becoming, in some sense, an empty vessel so that the divine can fill us up. We should seek to dissolve our own evil, self-centered ego, purifying ourselves so that God's grace can fill us up. There's the general prescription. Well, how do we do that exactly? We use Metaxu, the subject of this essay. We move towards God through or with Metaxu. Metaxu. So that's kind of some background on some of the ideas that's motivating what she's saying here. her kind of worldview, her philosophy of life, the way that she thinks that we ought to live. Of course, it doesn't seem like she's this clear in her writings. The piece that I assigned you for today is very dense. There's a lot packed into it. But it's an excellent opportunity to strengthen these critical thinking skills. Okay? With all of this in mind, with this perspective in mind, I hope that we can have a fruitful discussion today and really try to figure out what she's getting at here. Okay? What she's trying to say. And the little points that she's making along the way. Okay? So that is what we're going to do. Like some parts of the meditations that we looked at, like some parts of the Republic, we're going to read this together. And we're going to try to, figure out what the heck is going on. Sound good? This needs to be a participatory discussion. We're going to try to figure this out together. Okay? Okay. Anthony, will you read the first paragraph for us when it pops up?
Sure.
We're just going to take this kind of line by line here. Okay, go for it.
All created things refuse to be for me as ends, such as God's extreme mercy towards me, and that very thing is what constitutes evil. Evil is the form which God's mercy takes in this world.
That's a wild thing to say, isn't it? Evil is the form God's mercy takes in this world. What the fuck is she talking about? Well, let's talk about it. Okay, let's start with the first line. All created things refuse to be for me as ends. What do you think that means? Might be good to focus on this word here, ends. Yeah.
That all things are like means but not ends, I guess, in the way that they don't complete anything, they can only move further along.
What kinds of things?
Like something she says later, money isn't a means, it isn't an end, it's a mean. So like you can pursue it, but it's nothing in itself, but something to move you closer towards something else.
Right. Yeah, what is an end? What's a synonym for this word?
Goal. Destination.
Goal. Yeah. It's something that you're driving towards, okay? It's the thing at the end of the path you're trying to reach. It's like a goal. Okay? So all created things that have been created. Okay, tables, chairs, what else would fall into this category? Us, perhaps. What else? Money. Culture. Government. Society. Laws. All this stuff that we have in the world. Food. Yeah. Okay. So all created things, what does she say about them? Refuse to be for me as ends. She's refusing to take the stuff of our material reality, or even those abstract things, like power, money. She is refusing to take these things as goals. We might say, not ends in themselves. Okay. Good. Next sentence. Such is God's extreme mercy towards me. Here's the weird part. And that very thing is what constitutes evil. Evil is the form which God's mercy takes in this world. What is evil again?
Things to fill the void.
Yeah, maybe we could say something like, we're engaging in evil when we try to fill that void within us with things other than God, things that actually can't fill us up, that actually can't ultimately satisfy us. evil is the form which God's mercy takes in this world. How could that be true? Mercy? How is evil associated with mercy?
I think we kind of see it like the same way that our parents might punish us. So like when we're little and like our parents punish us, we might think, oh, our parents are evil for like doing this, blah blah blah. And like as we kind of get older, we realize, oh, they did this to kind of teach us a lesson to help educate us.
Okay. So maybe what she's saying here is something like, look, the evil in the world serves a purpose. What would that purpose be? To teach?
I don't know, I think it's kind of to, like, they're all means in a way to get closer to God since he can't be in that realm. But like if they're all means to an end to eventually like reach him through your actions maybe, then it's the mercy that it's like the closest you'll get is these means towards him.
Ah, yes. I think you're hitting the nail on the head, all of you. Yeah. She calls God's mercy evil, and we might think that that's crazy, but it seems like she's saying something like, look, the very fabric of reality, none of this could exist if God was here, because God is infinite, and if God filled everything up and made everything up here, none of this could be here. This stuff can only exist insofar as it's not God, as it's separate from God. So, evil, she's saying, serves the purpose of, again, driving us toward God. The thing that we should ultimately be pursuing, the thing that ultimately matters. Relationship, she thinks, with the divine. Evil is the form which God's mercy takes in this world. Now, why would it be merciful, though? What's merciful about God, allowing what we think are bad things to drive us towards him? What does it mean to call someone merciful?
I think I view it as like a struggle maybe to be better. As in like you're given a problem and thus the mercy is our ability to then make better of that. For instance, a sickness comes about so we invent vaccines. A war comes about so we invent better machinery.
So, it provides us with motivation or incentive. We might also say something like, well, what does evil do? Does it make sense to say there could be evil in the world without good? If everything was evil, would anything be evil? No. Okay, so maybe our experience with evil also provides us with a certain knowledge of what our condition is like, of our separation from God, of the potential for us to live an ultimately fulfilled life. Maybe that has something to do with it. And it's merciful, perhaps, because, well, what does God need from us? Nothing, right? Maybe we could see, through this strange lens, that in allowing us to experience evil, what God is doing is something that is merciful. He's letting us know about his existence. He's letting us situate ourselves, figure out the problem that we're dealing with. God doesn't have to do any of that, right? God doesn't need anything from us. Maybe from our situation, we could also induce that God is loving. I don't know. We'll think about it. Okay, next line. Sawyer, could I get you to read it?
Yeah. This world is the closed door. It is a barrier. And at the same time, it is the way through.
What? Doesn't that sound contradictory? This world, this created realm, is the closed door. It is a barrier. What does a barrier do? Blocks you, separates, right? Separates you from something. But yet at the same time, it is the way through. How could that be? Well, Walker, could I get you to read this section?
Yeah. Two prisoners whose cells adjoin communicate with each other by knocking on the wall. The wall is the thing which separates them, but it is also their means of communication. It is the same with us and God. Every separation is a link.
Okay, so what image is she formulating here? Is she constructing? Two prisoners whose cell adjoin. Okay, so we have two prisoners, right? This guy's chilling. This dude's chilling, but he's a little cooler. He's got his arms crossed. And the wall between them separates them, right? But at the same time, what can they do with the wall?
Communicate.
Yeah, how would they do that? Knocking on it, right? Yeah, they knock on it and there's vibrations or whatever. The other guy hears it or feels it. We can knock on it. Doot, doot, doot. So the wall is the thing which separates them, but it is also their means of communication. In some sense, we could say, they're not in the same place, right? They're in two different cells. But couldn't we also say, if they're both interacting with this wall, touching this wall, that they're also connected? Yes? No? Maybe so? There is something that connects them, despite the fact that there is a barrier between them. Okay. What does the last line say? It is the same with us and God. Every separation is a link. What does that mean? What do those two lines mean? Yeah.
That's what the world is between us and God. Is that we can interact with it and we can receive, I don't know, signals from the world, and how we respond to it would be how we communicate with God, because even though there's a separation of the world between them, it would reach him through every separation being a link.
Okay, so there's us, and we kind of exist within this thing called the world. We're a part of it. We're interacting with things. But what is she implying here? Well, something like this, whatever God is, let's just make God a blob, okay? This is God. God is somehow in contact with the world, with the created realm that we live in, with this universe. So, even though in some sense, we don't exist in the same realm as God, we can't see God, right? We probably don't hear God. I don't know, maybe you hear things. But there is still some sort of way that we can contact him. Okay? There's contact between us through this thing called the world. In what sense is there contact?
Going on to the say was, so basically, like, like kind of like what you were saying earlier, so in everything evil, there has to be something good, and kind of God wants us to kind of cling on to that goodness in hopes that, like, at some point we can kind of have that connection with Him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe part of this has to do with the picture of evil that she was painting before. Like, look, Nietzsche once said, joy and sorrow are twins. To the extent that one is diminished, the other is as well. To the extent that one grows, the other does as well. That's a rough paraphrase. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, it's like with the lack of something, the more abundance of the other makes us like not appreciate it as more. And it could be the same with the, I guess, like made separation between us and God. If He was here all the time, He'd be less valued or less sought after to like understand.
Yeah, I mean, think about it like this. Your childhood friend, who's your best friend in the world, moves away. And after 3 years, you're able to hang out with them. How happy are you going to be when you meet them again? Happier or less happy than in a situation where you get to see them every day and it's just a normal part of your day. You're just hanging out every day after school. Happier, right? Yeah, maybe insofar as there is so much evil, not only does that indicate that there's something that exists which is good, but also it allows us to appreciate the goodness, the power, the love of God better. Maybe something like that is the case. It is as if the existence of the separation provides us with evidence of God, provides us with contact of God. There couldn't be any separation between things unless those two things actually existed. Right? Wouldn't make any sense to talk about separation then. Okay, so she says every separation is a link. Let's continue on. Angel, can you read the next section?
Yeah. By putting all our desire for good into a thing, we make that thing a condition of our existence. But we do not on that account make of it a good. Merely to exist is not enough for us.
Okay. What is she getting at here? What does that first sentence mean? By putting all of our desire for good into a thing, we make that thing a condition of our existence. Maybe you could think of an example of this. Anthony, what do you ultimately want in life?
Stability.
Stability. Do you think that thing is good?
Yes.
Okay, it's good. You're chasing it, right? You're pursuing it. Has your life, in some sense, been warped around pursuing this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? It influences how you think and act?
Yes.
Yeah. If you take something to be good and you're pursuing it, you're using your energies to obtain it, to track it down, what do? Well, you make that thing a condition of your existence. Let's say, for example, you really cared what everybody thought of you. You want everybody to like you. You want to make everybody happy. That desire that you have comes to condition how you think and act. You won't say things in certain situations, right? You'll always do the nice thing. You'll always be sacrificing yourself for other people, right? Because you want to make them happy. It becomes like almost your mode of life, right? What you prioritize conditions how you live. It informs how you live. It's as if the thing that you're chasing after, if it is a high enough priority for you, is like, an astronomical body and you are orbiting around it. Okay? So, if something becomes the object of our desire, we think it's good, we want it, that thing retroactively informs how we live and how we see the world. Okay? It conditions our existence, she says. But we do not on that account make of it a good. What do you think she means by that? Yeah.
Could it be good as in like a physical good, like attainable? It's not attainable some of the time.
I mean, certainly that's true of life, right? You can't always get what you want. How do the rest of y'all see this? Again, let's say you really care about other people liking you. That desire informs how you think and act. Does the fact that you desire it, that you pursue it, make it a good thing? No? No, in fact, we might say that's actually something you shouldn't pursue. Right? Trying to make everybody like you, never going to work. Going to cause you heartache. Going to cause you suffering. Just because you pursue a thing does not make it good, does not make it an appropriate end or goal. And you all believe this already. I'm sure you have friends and family members that you think are pursuing things they shouldn't pursue. Right? You're like, oh, your priorities are out of whack. You shouldn't be focusing on that, right? You should be doing this other thing instead. She says, pursuit of a thing does not make it good. Just because we have accepted something into our lives and now we are pursuing it, that doesn't make it good. People can pursue all kinds of bad things, right? Merely to exist, then, is not enough for us. How do you interpret this? Yeah?
You have to have some sort of goal at all times. Otherwise, you get bored.
Okay, goals are important, right? We need things that we can pursue. Otherwise, I mean, you might think, what's the point? You know? Anything else you want to add? Merely to exist is not enough for us. What's one word that we might think is a synonym for merely to exist? To survive. Is surviving the same as living?
No.
What's the difference?
Well, one, you're trying to like focus on living. Like if you're trying to survive, you're just trying to scrounge for anything that you can. Versus living, you're just there. You're just going through the motions of every day. Like I go to school, go to work, this, that.
Surviving we liken to attaining our biological needs, right? What does it mean to survive? Well, it means you're getting at least enough food and water, clothing and shelter to not die, right? But what's living?
Living, a lot of people look into like socialization understand other people doing things that are unnecessary.
Doing things that are unnecessary, that's a part of it, right? I mean, really, think about this. What does it mean to you to truly live? I take it you don't just want to survive, unless you're extremely depressed and you've given up all hope or something, right? No, you want to live. You want to live a fulfilled life, right? So she's kind of, staking herself on this. I'm not going to seek to merely survive. I want to think and act in a way that's going to allow me to live, to find flourishing, fulfillment. Okay, I'll read the next part. The essence of created things is to be intermediaries. They are intermediaries leading from one to the other, and there is no end to this. They are intermediaries leading to God. We have to experience them as such. So, what are intermediaries? Well, created things. What things are fundamentally in this world is she says that they are intermediaries between us and God. They all lead to God. And she says we have to experience them as such. What do you think she's trying to get across here? Think about the way you treat the things around you. How do you see them? How do you understand them? What do you do with them?
Some people might see, like, once you attain something, you're kind of done with that, like, avenue. But she's saying that there should always be a bridge to something else.
And a bridge to what?
Eventually to God.
Right, that's her picture, right? What were you going to say?
I was going to say that once again, it's like where all things are only to reach God. And they should only be seen as that, and sort of like emptying them of like any worldly view of it, and just viewing it all as means to reach Him, and sort of like emptying your mind for Him.
Right. How do people often live their lives? Well, we're all preoccupied with what's going on this planet, right? What's going on in our country. We're anxious about this, right? We do all these things in the environments we move within in order to, find stability in this country or survive or whatever it is. People seek earthly things, we might say. They seek status. They seek power. They seek wealth. They seek fame. We might call these worldly concerns. They have worldly concerns. Oftentimes, the way we see things and treat things, like this desk, for instance, is we're like, yeah, I can use this thing to get some other thing in this world. But she says, no, that's not how you should look at them. We should see all of this created stuff not as means to achieve more worldly things, but as a bridge or a staircase to the divine. That's how we should see and treat things, and that's how we should experience them. This requires a psychological, a phenomenological shift in our perceptions of the world around us. Okay? It's something that we probably have to work at. You can't just change how you see things. Right? changing your perspective of all of this and what you should be using it for, well, that's going to require some work. It's difficult, right? But yet we have to experience them as such. Okay, could I get someone to read the next paragraph? Go for it.
The bridges of the Greeks, we have inherited them, but we do not know how to use them. We thought they were intended to have houses built upon them. We have erected skyscrapers on them, to which we ceaselessly add story. We no longer know that they are bridges, things made so that we may pass along them, and that by passing along them we go towards God.
Okay. The bridges of the Greeks, she says. We have inherited them, but we do not know how to use them. How do we treat the things of this world? How does she describe it? For example, the stuff we got from the Greeks, what we call the origin of philosophy in the Western world.
We see them more as like gifts from like our ancestors.
Yeah, gifts of our ancestors. Yeah. And how do we treat them?
We treat them with like high honor and also kind of like a stepping stone to what we do for the future as well. Like almost like a blueprint.
Yeah, a blueprint? Yeah. What else?
Well, it's also, what she was touching on, we may just use them wrong. We may use them for our own means. Like, it's a bridge. We put a skyscraper on it. We are building upon it, but maybe not in the way that they were intended.
We're building upon it, but maybe not on the way intended. She contrasts, right, a bridge with a skyscraper. Whether you realize it or not, the way that you see the world, the way that you think and act, has been deeply influenced by Greek culture and society and philosophy. What kind of political system did Athens have?
Democracy?
Democracy. Right? What do we have today?
Democracy.
Democracy. Or something like it, right? A democratic republic. Not a pure democracy, but you know. Plato, Alfred North Whitehead said, the history of Western philosophy is basically just a series of footnotes to Plato. Plato's thought has come to still deeply inform how we see the world today. This dualistic split between this world and the other world, right? There are two realms. This world, bad, not so great, who cares? That's the shit, right? Isn't that the picture of Christianity? This privileging of reason over emotion, instinct, impulse. Sawyer, do you think reason is better than just following your instincts?
For many cases, yes.
For many cases, yes, right? You might say, look, sometimes you got to follow your gut, but the importance of education for a well-functioning society. Think of how many ideas, structures, systems we have inherited from the Greeks. And what have we done with them? Well, we've erected skyscrapers. What we're doing is basically we're just like, yeah, we like all this stuff that the Greeks did, right? And how they thought. Yeah, let's just use that to build our own society, brick by brick, okay? Building upon them as if that tradition is a foundation. But she says we should not treat it as a foundation. We should treat it as a bridge. And what do you do with a bridge? You cross it. There's motion. There's movement. You don't stay stuck. You use them until you have no use for them anymore. Very different, we might say, than how we are using these ideas, systems, prescriptions that we've gotten from our own history, right? We should be passing along them, using them as a means to reach God, not erecting something stable that doesn't move, that doesn't change. Yeah? Okay. Only he who loves God with a supernatural love can look upon means simply as means. People who aren't religious, who don't believe in God, what do they care about in their lives? If you're atheistic, just think about your own life. What do you care about? What are you pursuing?
Themselves, physical things, anything on this plane.
Anything on this plane, right? If you're somebody who believes that only this world exists, there is no afterlife, there's no transcendent realm, there's no creator God, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to think, this is the only life I have. I better make use of it, right? To get the stuff that I want. Whether that's money or stability for your family in this country, whatever it is, right? All of these worldly things. If this world is the only thing that exists, of course you're going to care about it. Of course you're going to try to make this life good, right? That's the rational thing to do. But, she says, only he who loves God with a supernatural love can look upon means simply as means. If you think this world is the only world that exists, you're going to take things in this world as goals or ends. Right? I mean, you're not going to take anything outside the world as a goal or end, but there are certain things you're going to be like, yeah, that's what I'm pursuing, right? The college degree, the stable job, a certain portfolio of investments, whatever. Maybe you care about being a politician, so you're trying to network, trying to build relationships with the people here, right? You're trying to accrue some sort of wealth so you can campaign, whatever it is. Everyone takes stuff in this world as ultimate goals or ends. We all do this, right? But only the person who loves God with a supernatural love can look upon all of this as means. Is she right? What do you think? Walker.
So I'm kind of thinking about this as, let's say, for example, in the Bible, someone willing to die for their faith.
Yeah.
They're looking at their life maybe as more than just their death, and it's going to be bigger than them.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, I don't want to die. I denounce my faith. I want to live. That's kind of how I'm looking at this.
Yeah. I mean, the person who is willing to die for their faith, obviously they don't see their own survival as their ultimate goal, right? What might they see as their ultimate goal in that situation? Heaven, perhaps? Or praising God? Or living a God-fearing life? Something like this. That kind of goal, we might call it in Plato's terminology, intelligible, but not material. Right? It's not about power or wealth or possessions. It's about something that is not material. Something transcendent, perhaps. So, the way that you are going to see and treat all this is, first of all, going to be dependent on whether or not you think there's anything outside of this universe. Whether you think a God exists, so on and so forth. Seems reasonable enough, right? But somehow love is a part of seeing all of this stuff as bridges, as means. How is love a part of this picture?
I think the way he's using love here is kind of just saying, like, as I said before, if all of your desire for a good, like, or something, blah, 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 it becomes the condition of your existence. It's saying that if you love God this much, then He is the condition of your existence, and you will understand that everything is only a means to fulfill that condition. And it's sort of like love is just what makes it your condition for existence, you know, being God. Because if you have a supernatural love for them, you understand that that is your goal. That's the end to reach.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, I think. Love is an essential part of this picture of shifting our perspective from viewing this stuff as, oh, this is the be-all, end-all, I need it, I got it, to, I mean, whatever, this isn't the stuff that ultimately matters. If our lives revolve around God, lovingly, we'll be able to see all of this stuff as just stepping stones, not things inherently that we should pursue for themselves. Maybe you vibe with that, maybe you don't, I don't know. Okay, next line. Will somebody read the power paragraph? Power.
Power. In money, power's master key. It is means at its purest. For that very reason, it is the supreme end for all those who have not understood.
Power and money is means at its purest. What can you do with power?
You can attain something else.
Yeah, I mean, what is power? What would you say power is? Is it just being strong? If I'm a big buff, gym bro, I have some power. Is that all that power is?
The ability to enact change and the capacity of it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe power is something like the ability to do stuff, to make stuff happen, something like that. Or capacity. Maybe you don't. Maybe the word ability for you summons connotations of a skill. And it's not, power isn't exactly a skill, right? Using power is, but...
I mean, it's stated power is any mean. Just the means to do anything.
It's means at its purest. Means at its purest. What could that mean?
That it's nothing in itself.
Okay, say more.
That, like, you can pursue power and money, but having it ultimately does nothing separate from what you can do with it. So, like, it's the purest means, because if you had all the money in the world, it'd be completely useless. If you had all the power in the world, it'd be completely useless, because then it would mean nothing. There'd be no more to gain, and it wouldn't be an end, because it can only do something for you, but having all of it does nothing for you.
Okay. I like where your head's at. If you have all the power in the world, I mean, yeah, you can do anything that you want. We might say something like, looking at this from a slightly different angle, power is the ultimate means. Whatever power is, if you have it, you can use it to get whatever you want, anything else, right? Is there anything else in the world that if you had it, you could use it to get everything else? If you had the knowledge of everything. Yeah, okay, let's say I know everything about this world. Would I be able to become president of the United States?
Well, I mean, you'd have certain traits as well. It's not just knowledge. It's like a culmination of different things.
Right. I would need a lot of money. I would need connections. I'd have to be charismatic in some sense, right? Be able to use rhetoric really well. So knowledge can get us far, but knowledge by itself cannot get us everything. We might say power by itself can. If you have power, you can do the thing. You can make the thing happen.
Would power in this sense kind of be the supernatural love that was touched on earlier? Because it is the means in its purest, and like a pure mean would essentially conceptually be able to attain the knowledge of God.
That's a great question. What is necessary to cultivate a relationship with God, to commune with God? Would we say power is necessary for that? I mean, in one sense, we would say that it kind of is, right? If we've defined it generally in this way, right? But whatever you need to get closer to God, do you think of that as power?
Well, it's what you were touching on. It's seeing power as the means, or like a means to God, sets up another barrier. And every barrier is the form of communication.
It's a link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if power is that general, then maybe.
Yeah, maybe. If we define it this generally, I mean, she doesn't define it here, right? We could say, yeah, you need power to get to God. But if you think about the ways people think about power on this planet and what power is, I think many of you would say, no, you don't need any power to develop a relationship with God. You don't need money. You don't need to be a political representative. You don't need to know, the President of the United States. Yeah.
I was going to say, it could also be seen as kind of like relinquishing powers, like a way to become closer with God by like Him having the power, and like kind of just like letting like the natural like will of things like kind of just be as they are, to like kind of gain that like understanding of it.
So power can be a real barrier between us and God. Yeah? Are there people that you've heard of throughout history, even today, who are possessed by this desire for power, or the exercise of their power? I'm sure you can think of some examples, right? For those who don't understand the situation that we're in then, and our separation from God, they take it as the supreme end. They take it as the thing they should ultimately pursue, ultimately cultivate, ultimately obtain. Do you agree with that? If you think this world is all there is, what are you ultimately trying to get at the end of the day?
I think it'd be freedom, and sort of this power in the way that we've described it is freedom. It's the ability to do whatever, like if this world is all there is, then having the ability to do what you want in this world is the only freedom there is. And so that'd be what you pursue. And so power is the means to the end for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, take what you like. Maybe your ultimate goal is to have a family and settle down. Or maybe your ultimate goal is becoming famous or becoming a great musician. Well, ultimately, why are you chasing that? Why do you want that thing? Well, Weil is kind of implying here, it's because that thing brings you power over your life. To do what you want to do, to feel the emotions you want to feel, to satisfy the desires that you want to satisfy. Those things, they give you power. Maybe you don't want to look at it through this lens, though. In any case, she goes on, this world, the realm of necessity, offers us absolutely nothing except means. Our will is forever sent from one means to another like a billiard ball. Oh, okay, I need to get ready for class, so I got to do this thing. All right, I got to do my hair. I shower. I got to brush my teeth, so I can make the money, so I can get the jobs, so I get the college, right? It's like our lives, if we're not oriented towards the divine, is just a series of moving between one thing to another that allows us to get something else on this planet. All our desires, she says, are contradictory, like the desire for food. I want the person I love to love me. If, however, he is totally devoted to me, he does not exist any longer, and I cease to love him. And as long as he is not totally devoted to me, he does not love me enough. Hunger and repletion. What does she mean with this love passage here? What is she trying to express? Think about this perhaps in the context of your life. There's somebody that you see walking around USF sometimes. They're so cute. You're just crushing on them hard. You want to talk to them, but you're like, nervous. You don't want to get shot down. So you just kind of been, smiling when you see them from afar and, thinking about how someday maybe, we could be together. You like them for who they are. They're kind, maybe. They have hobbies that you share. If you entered a relationship with that person and they devoted their entire existence to serving your every whim, what would be the consequences of that? Would you love them more? Everything they do, they're just following you around like a puppy dog. They never leave you alone. They devote themselves entirely to you. If they did that, would they be their own person? No, we might say, look, if you devote your life and all of your actions and thoughts to someone, who are you? No one. You don't have any unique personality. You're not doing anything that makes you you, right? I think she's getting at something like this. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, it's like how I interpret it as like chasing an ideal.
Chasing an ideal.
Like you want to get as close as you can to that. I mean, even like in that example, but like if you attain them being devoted, you obviously don't want it, but the fantasy of it is more appealing.
I mean, this is kind of a cliche, right? But people say it's the journey, not the destination. Right? sometimes there are moments of disappointment that we feel when we finally got the thing that we've been trying to get. If we got it too easily, maybe. If we don't feel like, we put the right effort in. Or we got it through some chance that was silly or unreasonable or something like this. She says all of our desires are contradictory. Why are they contradictory? What do you think?
Because we will never be satiated with the amount of it that we get, but we never truly want to have all of it. So that's why anything in the corporeal realm will mean nothing, and only a relationship with God will complete you. So where getting it does mean something.
She has something like this in mind, right? Not only will your desires for things here, if you try to fill up your life with this stuff, she's implying it's not going to make you ultimately happy and fulfilled. Getting everything you want on this planet isn't going to bring you ultimate fulfillment. But also, every one of us has 1,000 different desires, let's say, within us that are pulling us in different directions. Influencing us to want to do different things that are contradictory. Good. But, she says, desire is evil and illusory. Yet without desire, we should not seek for that which is truly absolute, truly boundless. It is, therefore, even though it's contradictory, leads us into messes, cannot ultimately be fulfilled by the things of this life, it is what? What does desire allow us to do?
It allows us to essentially give birth and then realize that we should do something else. Basically go from the evil to the conceptual good.
It drives us towards God. Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you very much. We'll leave it off there. I will see you all on Thursday. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you.